this is a topic that I really wanted to get to, that broad aspect of fans in the stands. And if we really do need them, because as our producer, Alex Walls, know, we recorded our podcast for the sports section of the Fordham Ram earlier this week. And we had that as one of our main topics. And I wrote about it in my column this week for Beyond the Scoreboard. And for me, Chris, it's tough because we want things to go back to normal, and normalcy is exactly what everyone needs. And I understand that sports fans are exhausted. They don't want to be in front of their televisions anymore watching games. A lot of diehard fans, they want to be in that in-game atmosphere, be there in person, because obviously, as we know, covering it and going to games as fans, it's a completely different experience. But when you look at college football and the NFL, and when you look at these broadcasts, you are seeing people blatantly break health and safety protocols where their masks aren't on at all times. People are not socially distanced with the other groups around them. People are celebrating together, high-fiving, hugging, and acting like if nothing is wrong. And then in the Eagles game last week against the Baltimore Ravens, you even had fans fighting and taking the opportunity to not only break social distancing, but to just try and beat each other up for no apparent reason, which makes obviously no sense to me. But again, and then we see it in college football where the student sections of these arenas, like the University of Georgia, at Texas A&M, we heard what Dan Mullen said at Florida, wanting to pack out the swamp, and then subsequently getting COVID, and a majority of his players and fans getting COVID after that game in which they lost to A&M. But again, with everything going on, I just don't see why we didn't just give the proverbial punt on fans in the stands. I know the money there in stadium and the revenue generated from fans, but Chris, at the end of the day, what's it worth to have fans in the stands when these fans aren't being tested for COVID and they're literally going into what are those things, that signs that you put on the I'm losing it right now.
Well, yeah.
Yes, that's what it's an experimental test tube of people together, and whatever happens, because again, the players, coaches, those who work at the stadium, officials, they're all being tested daily, but the fans who are entering these stadiums and these arenas aren't. So I just have to wonder, is it really worth it in the grand scheme of things?
I first want to start off by saying we are going to discuss this, but you should still go read Andrew's piece. It's a good time. And listen to the podcast, of course. So I think what you say is correct in terms of college football. What we've seen from college football, and specifically the SEC, but Clemson and Notre Dame and the ACC have fans, NC State, all the teams in the ACC as well, it's been nothing short of immature. I mean, you look at schools across the country who have had to close and send all their kids home because they couldn't control the virus, but now Texas A&M is going to let that was an unbelievable amount of people in the stands. Texas A&M, Florida. I don't know if you watched that game, but wow, that was a lot of people.
Yeah.
So I do think that it's immature. I do think that we're going to get to a breaking point where they're just going to have to limit the tickets and stop giving them out, but we shouldn't have to get to that point. I think that I didn't love the idea of having fans at the World Series and the NLCS, because to me, it breaks the idea of a bubble, right? Because that's the point of the MLE playoffs, is to bubble the players, but you're bringing fans in, therefore it's not a bubble anymore. It's a whole just wishy-washiness from Manfred and MLB, but that's worked out decently well. They're very far apart. That's a huge park, and there's a lot of people there, but they're very, very far apart. So it's been okay. For college football, on the other hand, it's been pretty much a disaster. And I'm going to include the Dallas Cowboys in that, who have 25,000 people.
Over 25,000 people going to their games.
Yeah, so I'm going to include Dallas Cowboys and the college football, because I think the NFL has been a little bit more latent. Yes, there was the fight, the Eagles game and all that, but they've been a little bit more acceptable with the number of people they're letting in. But for me, there's just no reason for it. Like, I'll speak candidly for a second. I am an Islander fan more than I am almost anything on the planet, more than I am a human being at sometimes, as you know. And being a beat reporter for FUV for the Islanders is literally one of the greatest things that's ever had. It's awesome, right? It's the greatest thing ever. I get on the train, I go to the game, I eat free food, I go to the game for free, I get paid, and I sleep at my grandma's house and go back to class the next day. It's fantastic. And getting that taken away sucked. But sitting on the couch and watching them go further than I've ever seen them go before, was still amazing. Yes, in game 3 against the Lightning, it hurt. That was like, man, they're wearing the blue jerseys. This game should be at the Coliseum and I should be there. Yeah, it hurt. But they still played the game. They won. It was great. It's still sports without the fans there. Does it suck? Yes. Do I want to go back? Do I want more than anything to go to opening day at Yankee Stadium next year? Yes, but I'm probably not going to because it just doesn't seem right. So I don't think that we should have all these fans in the stands. If you want to have 5,000 people, I guess that's okay. But when you're getting into the numbers, 10,000, 15,000, 25,000 people at enclosed Jerry World the other day, that's insanity, Andrew. That's crazy.
And this is the thing. I'm not against having fans in the stands. I would love for the stands to be jam-packed and to have media there and as beat reporters and fans for us to enjoy ourselves. But again, if these professional sports leagues made the conscious effort, why not require fans? Why not have a mandate where you have to bring an official negative test that is recent within 7 to 10 days that you have tested negative for the virus, at least because there are so many people who are asymptomatic.
Right.
So if they take off their mask, they don't even know they have it. They could high five somebody. To me, it's just there are free tests that people can take in each city, especially cities that have a higher percentage of reported cases. So again, I just think there is so much more that can be done to make sure that every fan that goes into a game knows that every other fan has at least tested negative and does not have the virus up to that point. Because at this point, it's really just a roll of the dice.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, I went to the barber the other day and I had to get my temperature checked, but they can't give all these people their temperature checked. And they're significantly more prone to getting the virus in that situation than I am in a one-person barber shop in middle of nowhere, Connecticut. I mean, so at some point, there just has to be common sense that prevails. This doesn't make a lot of sense for colleges, especially. I know I'm hammering home that point, but for real, like, I just don't understand why colleges are allowing all of these kids from their schools to go to the game. I know that there's no outside fans; it's only students mostly at most places. But like, why are you doing that? Like at schools up in the north where there's not big college sports atmospheres like Fordham, you're not allowed to be around people who aren't your roommates without masks on. But now, like, we could just go to a football game. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I hope that we're at a point one day where we don't have to discuss playing the World Series in front of nobody. But right now, that's the point where we have to discuss it. And we just have to face reality instead of what we want at some point.
Yeah, and you mentioned college football. The huge demographic of fans in those stadiums are 18 to 22-year-olds. So if you leave an 18 to 22-year-old at their own devices, they're going to put their mask down for most of the game. They're going to cheer and high five and hug somebody right next to them or somebody down the aisle just because they're happy that a big play or a touchdown was scored. I think that's the thing too. College football understands that a good chunk of their revenue comes from allowing fans in and having in-stadium revenue. The NBA, the NFL, Major League Baseball, they can get away with not having fans in the stands for a certain parts or certain portions of a schedule, whether it be regular season or postseason. But again, I think for college football, having fans in the stands is really what makes the college atmosphere what it is. And having student sections jam-packed and the fight song playing and sometimes hundreds of thousands of people just cheering, whether it be in LSU or Ohio State, where the capacity can go, over 105,000 people if they wanted to. So I think at the end of the day, yes, you might not want to watch it from your sofa, from your couch, but would you rather do that or take a chance? And some people are bringing their children to these games too. And so you're putting people at risk, and really just to watch a game that you could easily stay home, order some food, get the recliner out, and you're good. But again, I think some people are really just fed up with what the sports world is now as far as fans are concerned, and not being able to have been in stands for a 6-month period of time. And now everyone's back and in the moment, forgetting that, hey, there's still a pandemic. Yeah, you're allowed to go to a football game, to a baseball game, but don't forget that just because you go inside these walls into these venues doesn't mean that when you get out, there aren't other people who could be affected by where you just went and you were just around moving forward because we're still fighting a pandemic.
Completely agree. And I think one thing that's saving fans in the stands right now is we don't, how should I phrase this? Like, we don't have the identity of these people, right? We don't know who they are. So for all we know, some random person who went to Tennessee, Georgia 2 weeks ago, um, has the coronavirus, and we just have no idea, right? Like we could look at dashboards for colleges, or we could look at the rise of cases in Arlington, Texas. But at the end of the day, we don't know if all of those people went to the game, if none of those people went to the game. We had no idea. And that's what's saving fans in the stands, right? Like, we were saying, like, oh, they're going to shut down baseball after a bunch of Marlins players got it because we knew it was the Marlins players. Oh, they're going to reschedule the Chief Patriot game because we saw all the people on the Patriots get the virus. Those people have not that people don't have identities. They have, like, they have to tell us because they're part of the NFL. Those people who go to the games don't have to tell us. So we have no idea. For all we know, there have been 0 cases transmitted through fans. For all we know, there have been 1 million. I have no idea. And that, to me, is what's saving fans in the stands, is once they leave, it's not the people in charge's problem anymore.
Yeah, they can wash their hands of it once fans are gone and they go back to their regular day lives, where they could be exposing older people and younger children who are more susceptible to be harmed by the virus. Excuse me. I would just end it on this: yearning for normality should not be worth potentially contracting a virus that has killed over 200,000 people in this country. That's all I'll say. As much as we want things to go back to normal, we're not out of the proverbial tunnel just yet, and people need to understand that. And sports fans especially need to understand that. And when we can go back, we will. But I just don't think right now it's worth it in the grand scheme of things.